Alright guys, so the big RPG game update was revealed on Wednesday's State of the Game. It was only the first part of 3 big updates for the game, the other 2 coming next week, and holy crap, there was a lot to digest. If you want a recap video, please go check out my most recent video. I did it on Wednesday, which will cover everything. Today I want to go over the good and bad things that I took from the stream. I know we're all not going to see eye to eye here, we're not all going to agree, but that's cool. So please leave your comments down below and maybe drop a like whilst you're down there. Let's begin. Alright, so I've got a list of both good and bad things with some that are kind of borderline, which we'll get into. I'm not going to cover everything because this video could be an hour long, so instead what I've done is picked, the main things, in my opinion, that are kind of like the biggest good things or the biggest bad things. So let's start off with the good stuff. Let's start with a positive start to this video. So the first one is core attributes. Now these are going to be a huge addition to the game, and they come at a time when hybrid builds run rampant. Having to choose between weapon damage, armor, and skill tier will undoubtedly mean that you are going to need to decide whether or not you're going for a DPS focused build, a tank, or perhaps a support build. There's going to be a trade-off here that the game doesn't currently have. In the current game, you can easily have high damage, high armor, and fairly good skills, and that's something they're moving away from. They're moving away from this hybrid build where you can have everything, and they're going for those roles, those DPS focused roles, tank, support roles, that sort of thing. And this has to be one of the biggest and best changes to the game. The devs confirmed these core attributes are brand specific, meaning like, for example, Gilligard will roll armor every time as a core attribute, but you can recalibrate this if you want either of the other 2, so you're not stuck with that particular core attribute as well. One thing I will say is that these 3 attributes have to be balanced. Max weapon damage must offer, the same level of power armor would be to a tank build or skill tier to a skill build. It's not going to be perfect, but the closer the better, and that should minimize any sort of metas getting out of control, which is important for the game. Really important. So this is a very, very, very good addition. Next up is reduced drops, reduced loot drops. This one may actually split the community, but I think it's actually a great change. In the live game, we get tons and tons of loot, but 95% of that loot, is pretty worthless. I'd probably say 99% of that loot is worthless, meaning you spend a lot of time in your UI inspecting gear, deconstructing gear, and all of that sort of stuff. You're not actually playing the game as such. You're not in the world. You're in your stash, and you're destructing gear, straight off the floor, all of that sort of stuff. Instead, now we're going to get far fewer drops, but 80% are going to be worth picking up. And this kind of reminds me of the Division in the early days, which is a good thing. And I tell you what, this will make the Dark Zone better. Now, instead of getting, crap loot when downing someone, they will likely have much more valuable loot with this update. So in theory, PvP in the Dark Zone should be more frequent. People are going to want to PvP more. They're going to want to go manhunt. They're going to want to take people down because they know that the gear that they've got in their backpack, wherever it is, the gear that they've got that they're trying to get out essentially, is going to be, it's got a much greater chance of being valuable to that person. And that's really, really good. It's one of those kind of side effects, a really good side effect of the reduced drop rate. So again, positive change for me. We then got the max roll meter. This new UI change it's a very positive to the game, and it clearly shows you how close you are to the max roll for that attribute. It kind of reminds me of how the UI looked for the optimization station back in the Division 1. Of course, this wasn't possible before because of the stat budget system, which leads me on to my next good change. The budget system is gone. Now with this gone, now you won't need to farm, Alp Summit for the highest headshot damage roll, because you're not going to have that great difference between 2 attributes on one piece of gear. You can now instead farm any gear that you want, knowing full well you can get max rolls on any attribute. Instead of having to farm, Alp Summit so you can get that headshot damage so you can put it on Gilligard, whatever. Instead you can just farm Gilligard, get that headshot damage, and it can go up to max roll. You couldn't do this before with the budget system because of how the system works. So with this gone, that's a very good change. And, kind of in the back office as well of this, my understanding is that with the budget system gone, it also means that devs can adjust the attribute ranges if they need to. Again, couldn't do this before, but they can do this now. Build roles. So on stream, the devs only really showed support talents, but those themselves, they looked really interesting. You could see how they might synergize in a group, and that was good. The talents have, been revamped to be better suited towards roles, so there should be talents for support, DPS, tank roles, solo, that sort of stuff. And building on these roles and reinforcing these, they're very important to both group and solo play. And I'm very happy that the trifecta is back. We're getting the DPS tank, and we're getting the support builds, and all the talents and all the stuff around it are going towards that. And that's the direction they need to take the gear and that sort of stuff into the future. They need to keep building on these roles, because I think the roles that's coming with this update are going to be very important to the longevity of this game. Next, damage to elites has been removed. Now this, I've got to admit, this was some huge news that I weren't expecting whatsoever, and I think I'm pretty good with it. I don't know what it is, but part of me, and I can't even explain it, but part of me is not happy about it. But I'm actually, when I look at it logically and why it's been removed and all that sort of stuff, then it's actually a good thing. So damage to elites is, it's kind of become a crutch attribute for PvE related content. There is just really no room for other attributes to become viable, and the removal of this stat, this should actually fix that. The devs did confirm that weapon damage is going to account for the removal of this attribute, which is good, and it has to, and it should now make more sense as well, because in the current live game it can take much longer to down a red bar enemy than it does, an elite enemy, a yellow bar essentially, because if you stack so much into damage elites, especially if you're using a weapon like an SMG or something which doesn't have damage to health that assault rifles have, then it doesn't make much sense when you're playing the game that you're downing elite enemies very quickly, but you're taking longer for red bars. So this will fix that, because you're just going to do like flat damage essentially. So it is going to take longer to kill elites. I've heard a lot of people who are kind of hardcore players who like to play heroics and stuff have said they're happy with this, because I know a lot of people say that heroics are too easy just because damage to elites was in the game. So this should remove that, and I'm good with it. We'll have to see how this works when this update goes live, of course. New stuff. So it was confirmed that these changes are going to drop as part of a much larger package, which will contain new content to play, new stuff to obtain, and of course a new power cap, which is really probably the most important part, along with new content to play, because as everyone knows, we need new content. And I believe this is the right way of doing it. The new power cap, which, is something that naturally happens over time in a game like this, means you're going to be farming for gear anyway when these changes come. So for anyone saying, well, I had this great build and now you're ruining it, well, you're going to have to refarm anyway, because the power cap's going up, and that's pretty normal for a game like this, for power caps to go up and for you to have to refarm the gear essentially. So it's good that it's come as part of a whole package rather than on its own, and that's a good thing. And I'm actually going to do probably a whole video on this topic alone, because whilst I'm saying all this positive stuff that is coming with new stuff and all that, I do have some concerns that I think needs to be addressed in a video on its own, so stay tuned for that one. Next we have named items. Now with the changes to talents, I initially had concerns that named items would become a little bit redundant, but the devs confirmed that these have been changed as well. Now, the stats for these named items, they're going to go beyond the maximum, making them still the best in slot with the right role. And again, that's important because we need like named items. We need somewhere like that kind of pinnacle item. We didn't have that a while back. They introduced named items, which I think was a great change. And I think that the way they're doing this is great, because you're still going to want to get the named items. I mean, what I can see already just for builds is either going to be like 4-piece gear set with 1 exotic and 1 named item, or 4 high ends with 1 exotic and 1 named item. That's going to be kind of, I would say, the meta build. And named items are going to be very important to pretty much every build out there. They are going to be the best in slot with the right role on them, of course. So that's the main good things I took from the stream. I want to take a look at a few things that I'm not so sure about, and I'll hopefully be able to explain why. The first one is talent changes. So I've got to admit, I'm a little bit concerned that depth as an overall kind of thing might be compromised with this update. Now, talents are only going to be available on the chest piece and the backpack instead of all 6 pieces of gear. Exotics will have talents everywhere, but aside from that, every other piece of gear, essentially, talents are only going to be chest piece in the backpack. I do agree with the devs that having, to balance 6 talents, mods, talent requirements, and everything else, not only made the system fairly convoluted, complex for some people, but it had a real impact on the RNG, which is one of the main focuses of this, the changes to the gear, essentially. My concern is, though, having to now focus on just 2 talents, that synergize, compared to 6 talents, means the overall depth is going to be impacted. The devs did say the depth shouldn't really be impacted as a result of this, but they didn't provide any evidence, at least that I saw, to kind of go with that. I saw nothing that went with that statement. It was just, it's not going to have any effect on depth, really, and that's it. I believe they're keeping the same amount of talents in the game, but you can only equip two at one time as opposed to 6. So to me, that is a loss of depth. There's just I just can't see a way around it, and I'm a little bit concerned about that. Maybe it'll fine, but at least on paper, so what they've told us, yeah, I'm not so sure about that one. We then have mod roles. So mods will now only have 1 stat. And again, I agreed the mods needed to be looked at because they contained, too many attributes. But I'm concerned that they've been oversimplified, and that's how I feel about talents as well. Created damage is confirmed as 1 stat from the images we saw on stream. We don't know what other stats are going to be available on those mods. So if you can imagine having crit hit damage, having these on, all 6 pieces, that could create some really powerful builds. And I've got some more news about that coming up in a video on Monday as well. And but personally, 1 stat to me just seems too few. And just like the talents, we're going to have to wait and see, I guess. It's hard because at the moment they haven't really given us a lot on this stuff. But just initially on paper, I'm concerned that the talent changes and the mod roles, the mod changes themselves, have really oversimplified the game to the point where, you lose a lot of depth, a lot of depth. And the devs said that that's not going to happen, but they provided no evidence in support of that statement. So the only evidence we have is what they've already told us, which shows that the depth is really going to be compromised here. So we're going to have to wait and see what else comes with this. Aside from that, though, I didn't really have anything else bad to say. If you want to leave your comments down below, good or bad, about the stream, then please do. Overall, I was very happy with the stream. I like the format. I like that Frederick Thylander was on there because, he's the man. He's the guy talking on Twitter. He's still talking on the Twitter to this day, revealing stuff that hasn't been revealed yet, essentially, which is what I'm going to cover soon. And yeah, overall, I was very happy with the stream. I think that the gear game, it had to be done, okay? So, people aren't happy. People are saying, they've had to make these builds and they're going to have to ruin them and stuff. Okay, yeah, some people aren't going to be happy. They're going to do their best to retroactively move the builds that you have to the new system, but it had to make a change. For if you look at the overall picture, if you don't focus on your selfish needs, basically, if you don't look at, what do I have and what am I going to lose, and instead look at the wider picture as to what does the game need, what changes need to be made for the game in general, then you'll see that these changes are very important. And the devs know that. They've been working on this for a long time, from what I can tell. It's taken a lot of hard work, from what I can tell. And I think overall it's going to be good for the game. And what I think is it's going to be the building blocks to hopefully a much better gear game. And that's really important because this game is suffering with its gear game. And that's kind of the biggest appeal of this game is the loot and the RNG and the gear. So they had to really fix this stuff before they started bringing out any other sort of content. Otherwise, people were just going to get annoyed with the system. So really glad that they've made these changes. Really happy with the stream. I'm looking forward to next week's state of the game when they're looking at recalibration, and they're also looking at skill refactorization, which just sounds like one of those kind of buzzwords that I've got no idea what it means. But looking forward to that because those are the other 2 pieces to the 3-piece puzzle. So I'm excited. Anyway, thanks very much for watching today's video. Hopefully you guys have a wonderful weekend. And until the next one, Epic out.